Okay, officially, hi everyone again. Thank you for joining us. My name is Kristen LeBlanc. I am the Executive Director of ATAP, and we are very pleased to be here today and welcome Jim Schnyder, who happens to be an ATAP board member. Hooray. Jim's going to present, and we want to thank Avature for their support of ATAP programming and ATAP overall. They are a sponsor for this webinar that Jim's going to present for us. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to him. And if you're just joining us, we're putting where we're located in the chat. So if you're interested in letting us know, we just got someone from Virginia and Fort Collins. We'd love to know where you guys are. Also, feel free to put anything in either the chat or the Q&A. We'll be both managing those things so we can answer any questions you may have. One last thing for ATAP purposes, Global TA Day is coming, and we're planning another virtual event September 7th. So mark your calendars. We'll be sending more information soon. You can register now on our website at atapglobal.org, and we will have more information on speakers and content and the structure of the day coming soon. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jim.
Perfect. All right. Thanks, Kristen. Appreciate it. And welcome, everyone. This will be a interactive session. You know, what I tend to do, if anybody in the chat, if you guys want to say, hey, have you ever seen me present before? Feel free, seen you, Jim, or whatever. You know, I tend to present at a lot of conferences, you know, events like SourceCon and others. So, you know, it's one of those things where if you know me, I try to monitor the chat. I try to do things in the moment, but there may be situations where I miss a question or I miss something. Just make sure that you pop it in the chat. We'll try to get to everything the best we can, you know, and go through things. So today in the session, here's a little bit about the agenda, about what we're going to do. The thing I want to make sure of, you know, today, what I really want you to know about is to really understand about, if you're looking at it at a new ATS, is what's the process for kind of an RFP and going out and shopping for a new ATS system. And then what are some of the features, functionalities, you know, the takeaways that we want you to have from this today are, you know, how do you identify the vendors, and then how do you vet and select your finalists? And then we also want to make sure that as you're implementing the system, that we give you some of the potential pitfalls, some like things to watch out for. And then also the bigger thing that people don't think about are how to prepare and project manage this, because it is such a big initiative that it's not always accounted for. So one thing I want to make sure that this is, you know, this is today is not intended to tell you what specific ATS to buy. It's really to give you the options, understanding how to maneuver, navigate, and also help you with the selection process. So with that, as I've said, it's not intended to tell you what specific ATS to buy. I do want to go into an introduction from our sponsor, which is Avature. The webinar is sponsored by Avature. And just a little bit, they were nice enough to share some slides. They're sponsoring this, so we at ATAP do appreciate it. So a little bit about Avature. If you're not familiar with it, it's you know, it's a highly configurable enterprise SaaS platform for TA and talent management, and it really empowers leading edge HR strategies for over, I want to say, like 650 enterprise level customers, like you know, big companies, 110 Fortune 500 companies, 28, I think it's around 28 of the Fortune 28 of the Forbes Global 100, including like L'Oreal, BMC Software, CBRE, are all those. So if you're not familiar with Avature, they were one of the first pioneers of CRM technology and recruiting. Actually, they were a CRM out there in the industry even before LinkedIn Recruiter came along. So an amazing engine, but they also not only have the CRM, a great engine that they built the ATS platform on. So The one thing is that it gives you that kind of one platform model, which gives you a really cool, flexibility option. So the reason I like this slide, and I'm really glad that Avature allowed us to have this in the deck, is that when you look at the Lego blocks and everything on here, like these are all of the solutions that you see on the screen that are in the Avature suite. So you start with an off-the-shelf option. You can change it up at any time. You can add on new solutions. It just depends on what you want. It's so flexible because the solutions are highly configurable, so that as a customer, you can configure, customize it to suit your needs. But most importantly, I think the thing is, and what this slide hopefully shows you, is that everything resides in the same platform. It allows you to seamlessly pull data from across all of your solutions and make Avature kind of like your one-stop database and source of truth. So, I've got one more slide here on Avature for kind of the beginning Avature discussion, but as you can see, they offer a lot more than just ATS. But the other thing that Avature has been, most of their companies and their customers, I do want to tell you this, and I think it's okay from an Avature standpoint to say this, that I think Avature would be okay, that most of their customers are kind of mostly mid to large enterprise customers. Large, mid-sized companies to large enterprise customers is where I see kind of where Avature usually plays. As I said, like about 110 of the Fortune 500 companies are clients. So as we go through some of the stuff today, I'll show you how they fit into kind of the bigger marketplace and all that. So enough about that. Let's talk a little bit about an intro to who I am and about my background and why I have the right to be able to speak to you today on this topic. So why don't I start in, I've got this like irritating little laser pointer, but why don't I use my pseudo laser pointer here? But when you think about all the things that I have, what matters most, obviously I've got my family, my wife, Yadi. We've been married for 20 years. I've got a son, Jake, who's 17, daughter, Izzy, who's 14. So I've got 2 high schoolers. I know you guys are probably like, oh, help you. I'm originally from St. Louis, but the thing that you probably care about most is that my company, Recruiting Advisors, been around, and we've been in business 4 years. We specialize in, I'll get into that in just the next slide, but I'm an ATAP board member. So if anybody started or came in late, I am on the board of ATAP. But one of the things that you're probably interested to know is that in a prior life, I was actually an ATS regional sales manager. So I actually sold applicant tracking systems. So, and what I do today with my business is I help companies select or either configure and optimize those solutions. So one other thing just about me, I always like to have kind of a little bit more on the personal side, just to kind of make that connection. So I'm just not this talking head that's on this webinar, but I'm a big sports guy. If you guys know me, I'll talk soccer with you all day long, or any sports. If my dog comes barking or comes up, the dog may make an appearance in today's presentation. I'm in Dallas, Texas, so I've got to love the sun. And I think I may get a house, out in the country sometime, but I'm a city guy, so through and through. But hopefully you guys enjoy that slide. That's one that I like to introduce, to use to introduce myself when I'm talking to people. If you attended Global TA Day, you guys know that I tend to introduce myself with that slide. So Recruiting Advisors, what do? We specialize, as I think I mentioned, we're a consulting firm. I'll fly through this as quick as I can. Project-based consulting, so that if people have an ATS, they want to make it better, or they want to they've just purchased one, they want somebody to be on their side as a guide through the whole process of an ATS implementation. That's what we do. So we do advisory work, staff augmentation, custom training, system selection, all that other fun stuff. So, I've got a team of 10 people. We have 3 Deloitte consultants that help, with clients with like system selection projects, et cetera. Some of our clients that are with recruiting advisors, and then I'll stop talking about recruiting advisors here in about 20 seconds. So there's that. So there's the intro about me and my background. So for today, what is today's situation? So based on aptitude research, 44% of companies invested in new technology in 2020. So when you think about that, and think about it as like new technology is like HR tech. And then 1 in 4 companies are looking to replace their ATS. Now this was 2020, 2021 data, but most companies are going through some sort of talent acquisition transformation today. You guys know as well as I do, everyone all the time is keeping an eye out on what's going on with their ATS. Is there a better one out there? How do I solve headaches and issues with my team? So one of the things that I always like to talk to people about is, let's talk about your current technology. People, when I talk about ATS systems, one of the first things that I always do, which is kind of counter to what we're going to be talking about today, is I'm actually going to try to talk you out of changing your ATS system. Because the thing is that, do you need to make a complete system change? Complete is the biggest word. The big thing is, do you have the internal capacity to do this? Because you've got to think sometimes, depending on the size of your implementation, it could be a 6-month evaluation and selection process, 12 to 18 months to implement a new ATS. And so you have to think about, what is the real problem? What's driving this and desired change? Is it, in your ATS or whatever you do, you don't have talent communities, or you don't have recruitment marketing, the campaigns, or you don't have the capability of doing retargeting or sourcing? Is it a deficiency that you have on there? What I would say is that can be solved in other ways. You could add on a CRM, a candidate relationship management system, to the front end and solve problems. And I'll talk about that in a second. But a CRM typically has a short window to implement. And if you're buying a CRM to solve your ATS woes, just make sure you get a really kick-ass CRM that's the strongest and most flexible to be able to do what you do. And I've got a slide on that I'll share with you in just a second. So when you're thinking about a internal capacity to do something like an ATS change, I did a Facebook kind of crowdsourcing as I was doing this, to just say, I wanted to say, have you ever been on an ATS project and carried a full rec load and carried a rec load? And these are the responses that I came back and I got back from. One person said that they had a full rec load, a heavy rec load, and it was horrific, brutal, unrealistic is how to best describe. And then another person said, I carried a full rec load recruiting, as a recruiting manager. It was insane, not an easy lift. And then this person, I really like what they said. They tried to reduce the rec loads for people who were working on the larger projects, because they didn't want their people working more than 40 hours. If you are a recruiting leader that is selecting and going down the path of choosing a new ATS system, take this information to heart. Make sure that you plan your team accordingly, or you will have people working 40 hours a week on recs, and then they're working 30 to 40 hours on a system implementation, and they are not going to be happy with you. So figure out what you can do. If it's accenting with contract recruiters, getting consultants in to help you with this short-term lift to get this going, I highly recommend you think about that. So when I think about don't change your ATS, what can you do to do this? Discuss new releases, options, versions, that might be a new version. You may be on the oldest version of your ATS. And if you talk to your account rep, they may just say, yeah, upgrade to a new version and you get all this stuff. Some people just forget about that. They're like, hey, our account manager sucks and we don't want to deal with them. but a lot of times they may hold the key to you not having to do a full swap out of an ATS. There may be new functionality that's been released that you don't know about. When was the last time you saw a demo of your ATS that you implemented since you implemented it? It's one of those things. Keep current on what's going on. Hire a consultant to potentially redesign maybe your system, optimize it. And then, the bigger thing, it might just be a user experience, but try to eliminate unnecessary steps or take some of the unnecessary clicks out of the process. But, the bigger thing is just try to fix the problem if you can. Okay. The next thing is also, before you think about fully swapping out your ATS, consider integrations. Maybe there's something that there might be integrations that you might be able to sync up and link. Okay. So think about that there might be something that you could talk to your team about. And then the last thing is, like I've talked about a little bit, but add a CRM to the front end. There is more and more of a trend that I see people doing today is they've been, let's just say they've been handed an ATS that they didn't get the opportunity to do much selection of. And I'm seeing a trend out there of a lot of customers that are building a heavy front end in the CRM that does a lot of the heavy lifting for the ATS. And then what they do is, so a lot of it's in CRM, and they pass the necessary stuff over to the ATS at the right moments. So it's really kind of a concept of having a CRM, which works hand in hand with your ATS to keep you compliant, but also does a lot of the heavy lifting without having to do a full ATS implementation. And also the CRMs usually go in a lot quicker. Okay, now that I've told you and tried to talk you out of staying with your ATS, now I'm going to talk to you about, okay, you've made the decision. You're now going to make that jump into, I'm done. Time to pull the Band-Aid, and we're going for switching to ATS systems. Okay. So what do you do, and how do you evaluate who are some of the best systems out there and some of the best opportunities and possibilities? So, one of the things that I like, I'm really a fan of Fosway, the Fosway 9 grid that's out there, and also aptitude research. So aptitude research is, I think it's just aptituderesearch.com. You have to fill out give them your information, but then you get access to download some of their comparisons, and they give you a lot of really good, solid data on the different ATS systems. And then there's Fosway, which I'm a major fan of because I'm so visual that, it gives you, if you're a smaller company and you're looking for kind of a lower, smaller vendor, you look for the smaller kind of dots, and then, but if you're looking and you're a bigger company or you're a mid-sized company, you want to go with the bigger one that's going to allow you to scale. If you're a mid-sized company, you want the ATS system that is going to allow you to grow, so you don't have to go through another ATS implementation in 2 years because you didn't scale up with the right one. So what I would tell you is that do your homework, use some of this as kind of a springboard and a starting point to jump out. But I think, you'll find that some of the brand names that are out there as ATSs, people are kind of surprised when they start seeing, where people are on this kind of grid of potential and performance out there. So, and then you've got other ones that are like specialists that, do certain things, but they may not be the full ATS that you're looking for. So I would encourage you to do your research to make sure that, some of them have plugins and say that they do certain things like, yeah, we're an ATS. Yeah, we have CRM. But they're really known for doing other stuff. So I share that with you just so that when you start doing all your research. The other thing that you can do is obviously do the demos, attend HR Tech or Unleash or some of the other conferences, do your networking to kind of be able to go to one spot and do all your demos at one side. The last thing that I'll say and that I tend to recommend is Facebook groups, right? So you can go out to Facebook groups and you can start posting and getting some solid tips. some of the fun ones are always to kind of go into a Facebook group and then do a search on, like this, put in a name of a vendor and kind of see, like what's occurred and what people say. The advantages and disadvantages you have to watch out with that, though, is you've got a lot of the sales reps that are from those vendors that are out there in those pools. So you've got to look to make sure that who you're getting that information from. But the bigger thing that I always say, there's like three groups that I really like to look at, or four, are in Facebook, would be obviously the ATAP Facebook page. There's some traffic on there, but if you're a member of ATAP, we got a good where you can go and you can ask people. The Recruiter Network is another great Facebook page where they've got, it's a group that's kind of like you have to be a member, but there's a lot of good commentary. Recruiter Network and Recruiters Online are two. More on Recruiters Online is where I see more activity happening. And then obviously SourceCon and ERE are great places to go to be able to network with and talk through some of those things. So I'm going to keep going. I don't see any questions in the chat so far, so I'll just keep rolling. A couple of things that you need to know would be typical features in a modern day ATS. Now, these are usually on the larger kind of mid to kind of enterprise that you typically would see these features and functionality. Obviously, this is just some things I put on there, but there's a lot more, like modules, like hiring manager, employee referral, all these other things like portals and building a portal. That's other stuff that is in this. But the thing that you want to make sure that you're always looking for is that when somebody says an ATS, do they actually have all the pieces of the puzzle that you would be needing and looking for? So make sure that when you're going out to market, that you kind of get an idea of they have this, they don't have that. And it's just one of those things to ask about. In a second, I'm going to be talking to you about the RFP process. And if you get an RFP process and you follow a process, it allows you to have the vendor be able to tell you if they have these items and what they have. So it's really, they do this all the time, right? So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start talking about RFPs. There's a lot on this slide, okay? A lot of, not just pictures, there's a lot of text. But I want to make sure that when you are looking to do your request for proposal, it's usually a best in class way of going to market to ask for information. So if you are a very, very small company that has, 20 people and you need an ATS, do you need to do an RFP? I don't know. I'm not going to tell you that you need to. You may want to, just because it may save you time and headaches, okay? And then the other thing, Grant, I've got a question that is from Grant. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stop, and I'm actually going to go back a couple slides and talk about something that's in the chat that came through privately that is from Grant, if it's okay to say. But the one thing is that I've got here, do they have a CRM, ATS onboarding, and internal mobility tool? Okay, thank you. It's okay to say. Okay, Grant, thank you. So one of the things that a lot of companies just say, we need a new ATS. Well, that's an applicant tracking system. That's great. But the other thing is that if you're going out to, it's kind of like going out to shop for a car and saying, yeah, I want a car that runs. Well, you also want air conditioning. Do you want a convertible? Do you want a trailer hitch? And do you want all these other things that it can do? And you have to look at other pieces that they might have. And if they don't have it, can you connect it and can you integrate? So one of the things I put on this slide is it really depends on what your needs are as a company. If it's only an ATS and you're only wanting to swap that out and you want to keep everything else the same, then just swap out your ATS. But a lot of people, that kind of the move that a lot of companies are doing right now, and if you go into the applied research comparisons, they actually do these four things, because it's kind of a trend in the industry that I'm seeing, is that do they have a CRM? Do they have ATS? Do they do onboarding and internal mobility? Those are kind of the big four that I see when people are going out shopping for a new system. And what the difference is that the CRM is kind of what I call prospects and people that are your talent community. It's kind of like your people that you're courting. That's your CRM and your candidate relationship management system. That's what like your sourcing team and your recruiters would use when they're prospecting. They take a LinkedIn profile and they put them in before the person has applied to a job. Then you've got your ATS, which is your candidates, not your prospects, but your candidates. And that's where all your ATS folks go. This is kind of my approach that I take. Some people do it a little bit different. They like, they're the smaller companies they tend to put everything into the ATS, which at bigger companies can't get away with. But I would say that there's the CRM, then there's the ATS. Then the new trend is onboarding. So that what that means is that you're putting out a portal to allow people to do all of their paperwork, their onboarding, really to get to day one after you have hired them. It's like getting them in and doing all of that administrative pain in the ass work that we all know comes along with onboarding. And then the last one is the internal mobility is more, it's kind of like the internal job market that allows for you to be able to have like an ATS, but you're able to use it for your internal people to give them opportunities and jobs. The reason this came like huge in a year and a half to 2 years ago, that people who didn't have the internal mobility capabilities, when COVID hit and everybody was trying to redeploy their people, if they didn't have internal mobility, they were up a creek. So that's why a lot of people are making sure that they've got that in there. So hopefully that helps. I know I took a little left turn here, but I wanted to make sure that people understand that as I was going through this. Now, the request for proposal, what that means is that you are going out and you're kind of putting together in a way, yeah, no problem, Grant. It was a way for, imagine that you could give a survey to every sales team and vendor that you want to give you information about their product. They do this all the time. If they don't, and they don't do RFPs, they probably will say that they don't want to do an RFP because it does take a little bit of time for them to fill out. But most of the time they have sales teams or sales administration or operations teams that fill out these RFPs. You can typically find one from your IT team or your HR operations team that might have something. Sometimes you can find a really good one, an RFP out in Facebook, or you can find that somebody has shared or given. A lot of times that's intellectual property. Like for me and my company, we have RFPs that we put together that are kind of what I would say kind of top tier. Well, some people say they're top tier because we ask all the right questions and save time and make sure that we don't have anything that's left out. And you're like, no, there are no surprises when you get to, selecting your final product. You want to make sure that you've got like your survey of all the information that you need. So verify your requirements of what you're looking for, the features, the functionality. And then you can even ask questions about the vendor, like company information, like how stable are they? Another thing is like how many salespeople do they have to their engineers? This is one that when I was selling ATS systems, people would ask me all the time. Are you a sales-driven organization, meaning you've got I don't want to say a product, but you've got a product, sorry for the slip there. You've got a product that is set, and then you've got a sales team that just is selling because they're trying to get that product in. Or are they one that is driven by engineering and tech, where they have more technical people than they do engineers because they're always investing the dollars back into the technology instead of into the sales team? Okay, that's a big thing for you to want to know, because the future of the product, is it going to be sunsetted in a year or 2 years? That's always something to be careful and understanding of. Okay. You want to understand about their status on AI and also DEI and everything else. Okay. So The art of the request for proposal, this is kind of how it works. It is you pull together your RFP document, usually in Excel, make it super simple for them to fill out, and then you give it to the ATS vendors. Sometimes you can even ask an ATS vendor if they've got one that they'll want to share with you. Now, it sometimes is tilted in their, if you're going to do that, it's going to be tilted to their advantage. So you may want to go in and modify some stuff, but sometimes the ATS vendors might even share their RFP template with you. If they're nice, and if you're nice to them, sometimes they won't, but give them a deadline to return the RFPs and have them all sent into a single person or set up an email for that. That's what I like to do, is set up a RFP ATS for whatever. And then what you want to do is then get a time frame on when you're going to receive the RFPs. Give them the option of setting up a Q&A session. So usually what happens is on the bigger ones, you set up a, we're going to have a Q&A session after we've done the RFPs of this date. And then all the questions and answers go out to all the vendors so that everybody else sees all the questions and the answers, and that no one gets kind of advantageous info on the Q&A stuff. But then what you do is you trim your vendor list based on the RFP responses. And then what I like to do is do kind of initial demos, have the ATS vendors do an overview of the company and a demo, set them to a number of, I'll get into this on the next slide, but set a specific time frame that they have to go through and give them specific score sheets, have your folks fill them out immediately, and then do what I call kind of the final bake-off. I used to have to do these all the time. You get to the final round, and we call it kind of the bake-off, where everybody, you got the ingredients and you all have to bake, a cake in front of the customers, right? And so it's like, which one do they like the best? And so I usually do that over a 2 to 3 day period, back to back to back. Everybody's going to always want to fight for the first slot or the last slot, not the first slot. So because they want to be the last one that you've seen, just know that it's kind of one of the things that they always do. So you almost want to give them the slot that's preferred. Just, it's been my experience. But that's kind of the thing that I would say that I typically do in these. Now, when you're doing and evaluating your folks, limit the number of slides that you allow them to do, because what you're going to see is they're going to try to do death by PowerPoint. And if they don't have as strong of a product, they're going to try to show you everything in Excel or a PowerPoint, deck with screen grabs or something like that. No way. You want to see stuff that is working. So what I typically do is I use like scenarios, and then I always want to make sure that, like, a scenario, like a cybersecurity persona, you make up one, like Lisa Jones is a cybersecurity person, graduated from this, has worked with this, and then have them come in as an employee referral, take us through that journey. They came in from the talent community, take us through that journey, and then they applied directly to the job, take us through that journey. What I've found is when you do that, it kind of levels the playing field, and it gives you an idea of what the candidate experience is. It's not so much about what the recruiter sees and all that. You want to make sure, what is it like out there, and what's it like to be able to have somebody come through. And then always ask this question. We always used to talk about this term. I used to see when I was in sales that my competitors would come in and do this thing that we called vaporware, where it wasn't in production, but it's on the roadmap, and they would be able to show you screenshots. And that's the reason I always say that you want it to be live, show me it in production, as opposed to, hey, my dog's making an appearance, as opposed to show it to me in production, that it is live. So make sure that you always ask if what I'm seeing is live and in production, or if it's still in beta or it's not there. It really gives you an understanding of, to make sure that they're not showing you things that are not available, and you're going to be the person that's buying it and being their test subject. Okay. The last thing is just to make sure that people are scoring immediately following the demo. Do not allow them to wait until the last day because they won't remember everything. And you force, it's kind of like doing all the interviews, for in TA. You want to make sure that someone isn't waiting until they see what the boss says and then they're going to put in their scores. Make them, if they're going to sit through the demo, make them make a call. Okay. Then there's 2 other slides that I have here and then I'm done. Okay. And then we can open it up for questions and we can go through whatever you guys want. A couple things that I do want to make sure that we really talk about here. And this is from being a software sales guy and also from my, I think I kind of glanced over at the beginning of my presentation, but I spent 17 years at PepsiCo. I led the HR operating model. I was a global process and tools leader. I was there for 4 ATS implementations, helped select 3 of them. And the thing is that I've seen a number of things happen, and I want to make sure that whatever I tell you that they're like watch outs and pitfalls, that you don't fall trap to this as well. So it's just stuff that I want to share with you. Many a time you may know, or you may have already figured out that there are maybe top 3, top 4 ATS systems that are out there, right? So you probably know that. You also know that there's some other big names that are out there that are, out there. You know all these tools. The thing you have to watch out for is you may have a preferred vendor that you may want to see be kind of the proverbial winner or the one that you want to use in the future state. What I can tell you is, speaking from personal experience at PepsiCo, there can be a situation where you select a system in your due diligence of your bake-off. You say, this is a system that we want. I'm going to go down to the second bullet. The IT team could have a situation where you want to make sure that ultimately, when you go into this, who has the final the final decision and final say on the decision? Because a lot of times I've seen where recruiting leadership has been trumped by the IT team. I've seen it to where the IT team just said, oh, well, this other vendor called us and the other one wasn't getting back with us. This other team just wanted it more. And they ended up winning the deal because IT felt that they wanted it more and were going to be, they were the not as strong solution, but they ended up winning the deal because they hit the IT team after not doing as well in the bake-off. Okay, so I want to make sure that you guys are aware of that. If you're a leader, take that as free advice on watch outs, because I've seen it happen. The other one, which is the top bullet, is one that happens way too often, is that sometimes it's even over before it started, is that your finance team or even leadership may have a vendor, they may have a consulting team, they may have somebody that is already on site or may have a relationship. And there may be a situation where somebody comes in and we're like, we're going to give you a big discount on our ATS that we offer because we do other stuff. And, we're just going to give it to you, or we're going to do this and you're getting it for free. And then finance comes to you and just says, you're going with this. We made the decision. It's already done. And you're like, you didn't, just watch out. Okay. Because the user adoption, and that's when usually I get a call on what I talked about earlier with, we're stuck with this. Now we need to build a CRM and do the front end CRM that is the better solution to help us be able to use our ATS that we have to use. Okay. So I want to let you know that's something that I see happen way too often. The last thing that I would tell you when you're getting to your final decision and you got your bake off, you're going to not want to rush to inform all of your vendors that you've made your decision and that, hey, first one, you're good. Other ones, thanks. Reason being, I've actually seen I've seen this more in the last 5 to 10 years than I have in my previous life when I was doing software sales and implementing sales back in the late 90s. I will say that that's how long I've been doing this. I've seen things get caught up in legal with some things about, cybersecurity and all sorts of other things that your cybersecurity team doesn't want to budge on this, and then the vendor doesn't want to budge. I would just say, if there's ever a situation, my advice to you as a leader is to keep your second runner-up, your silver medalist, in play, because if there's ever the situation that you can't get past a legal issue, make sure that you've got that situation ready that you could flip to the second vendor if it makes sense. If they're just heading, if the first vendor was head and shoulders above the second vendor, the silver medalist, it was like not even a contest. Don't even worry about it. Inform the silver medalist that they're no longer in the game. But if it's close, keep your second one pretty close. Okay. I'm still not seeing any questions in the chat. Maybe I'm just not seeing it, Kristen, but guys, if you do have any questions, pop them in now so that we can get to them very quickly. The last slide that I have for you is I recommend that when you're going down this journey to have some fun with your project team. You're going to want to make sure they are not carrying a full rec load, and how you designate them that they're not carrying a full rec load is that they are on project. With me at PepsiCo, I actually named our project for one of our last ATSs, and we called it H2O. Feel free to steal that if you guys want. But it was hello to onboarding, or I think it was hire to onboard. But the biggest thing is you call it like code name, project, whatever, and you brand it. So you don't have to constantly say, no, what does this person do? Well, it's an ATS project. They're doing this, and this. Call it a project, just like you probably do with all your other stuff, so that leadership and everybody else knows what it is. And then you also can say it's a project we need staffed. Now, when you're doing these, people often forget to bring in IT. They forget to bring in operations, like the people, like the coordinators or anybody else at larger companies that might schedule interviews. They really need to be part of these discussions for when you're implementing the system, to have an understanding, because many a time they might be doing a lot of the use of the system. Okay. Then the other is, make sure that you've got a good blend of people that are subject matter experts, but also get new users that maybe haven't been with the company for too long. Why is that important? Well, constantly the people that have been around a while are like, they're, probably subject matter experts on your ATS, but they're using your current ATS, and there's a reason they're wanting to make a change. So don't replicate what you did before. The newer people may have been using an ATS at a different company, and may come in with all these fresh ideas like, hey, we did it this way over it this way, and we use this. We used a form to do this. We use this. And they may come up with all these crazy cool ideas where your people that have been around, who are kind of your subject matter experts, may not have that kind of insight. I know this is all kind of common sense and knowledge, but you'd be amazed at how often it's like people get put on these projects that, are not the right project team. And you really need to think about it in the way that you're staffing. Okay. And then, know it's going to be a long process. You're going to have to, if you're doing this, start mapping out your current processes, and then map out your future state processes. This is one of the first things that my company does when we come into a company, to help them, is we want to make sure they've got their current state and their future state. And then don't let the technology dictate your future state. You have to have your processes in order to make sure you've got your future state all taken care of, right? So, and then the last thing, and this is kind of a shameless pitch, but don't hesitate to use a consultant to be in your corner to help you as an advisor, because what happens way too often is you'll get the vendor that will say they'll put team together to help you with the product and bring you through the whole process, which is great. But when you start these things, it's sometimes you don't know what you don't know, right? And so you're trusting that the vendor is going to give you everything and the best, they're going to give you the best flavor in your perfect flavor of ice cream. And maybe they're giving you plain vanilla and you want Rocky Road, right? And so what helps sometimes is to be able to have a vendor that is, that can help you with pushing the envelope a little bit, knowing what the pivot points are, and can help guide you through the process. So that is, I'm going to end kind of with that. I know we've got a question in the Q&A, which is from Susan. Is it okay, Kristen, if I go right to that, or were there any other questions?
Absolutely. That's the only one I see so far.
Okay. Hey guys, what I would say is please hit us with the in the chat or in the question area. I'm monitoring it the best I can. If you want me to go back and revisit any slides, whatever I can. What should you expect from the vendor with regards to support during the implementation process? Incredible question. One, a great question to be answered in the RFP as well and in your process. So now what I would say is, what I like to say is, the first thing you want to check is, and I've seen it a number of different ways. Now, most of the time, you're going to have the vendor that offers you the opportunity to help you with the implementation. They have professionals. They will give you a project manager, depending on the size of your solution. If you'll get a project manager, you'll get implementation specialist, and you'll get a configurations team that helps you. Usually it's 3 people, 2 to 3 people, depending on the size of your company. And then, and they're not going to be full-time assigned to you. They're usually part-time. They're assigned to other customers. But they're helping you with some of the things. They'll help out with a good implementation team, a good one, will help you with your project plan. They usually come to the table with a good solid project plan and say, we're going to do this week 1, week 2, week 3. This is how we're going to frame up. These are our recommendations for your team. This is what we recommend for change management. So what you'll find is the bigger the company or that they cater to, like some of the ones that I was pointing out that cater to some of the bigger enterprise companies, they have large implementation teams, and the vendor has a lot of that for you baked into your contract and your agreement. The smaller companies, like some of the ones that were in, like the smaller circles, they'll give you kind of a plug and play. Okay, so it's more of there's not a lot of configuration, not a lot of customization. You get a very graphical user experience that is very easy to use, but there's not a lot of capabilities for you to be able to do specific stuff like put in custom fields or modify the workflows or the journey that you would have in kind of your steps. So, I think it just depends on the size of your company and the size of the product you're getting. But to answer your question, Susan, project plan, most of them would give you a project plan. They're going to help you with getting the system turned on, put into place, training of your users, answering any questions that you do have. Make sure that you talk through integrations. That's a big one that people sometimes forget and expect that that's just going to be talked about or just going to magically happen. You have to make sure that their people talk to your IT team or get a consultant that can help you with brokering that in order to do specific things. There's other little things that people don't think about is that you've got a situation where, let's say that you're doing IT, your email coming out of your system is going to be out of this new system that's coming out, and the email looks like it's coming from your system. you have to make sure you're working with your IT team to make that happen. Sometimes the vendors won't always talk to you about what needs to be done with the IT side. So, okay, I see another question. We're getting some good questions in the chat, and I think this is Sarah. Okay. I love it, Sarah. Thank you. And you posted it to everybody. So I guess, Sarah, that it's okay that I say this. So based on your presentation, I may have royally screwed up my last ATS implementation. What on average does it cost to hire a consultant? Now you're putting me on the spot that you're like, okay, hey, what do you cost, Jim? It really depends on the implementation. It depends on what part you want to play, right? So I have, and if somebody, I think I'm still on the slide that's got my information. If you guys want to talk about that afterwards, I can. But there's really two ways that I try to talk about ways of framing up how to use a consultant, okay? Do you want them like, I'll use a football. You guys remember on that sliding scale, I like sports. I'm going to use a football analogy, not soccer, but an actual football analogy. Do you want us on the sidelines whispering plays and questions and things into your ear as the head coach, meaning we're the advisor with you on the sidelines in the meetings with the vendor, going through and talking and meeting and doing all of those things, and we're giving you the information? We tend to do that with a lot of clients because they just know that we're giving them the advice in the moment, and we can help them prep for meetings with the vendor or whatever. The other one that people use us for, which is kind of more on the other side, and this is the one that some companies who want to do it all themselves, but they just want the advice of like these pitfalls and what I'm telling you today and other stuff, they use us as what we kind of call the armchair quarterback, where it's a retainer kind of situation. They call us when they want. It's like phone a friend, and so what we'll find is that we have some customers that they're meeting with the vendor, the ATS vendor, and every Monday morning, they're going to say, this is what we're meeting on. Can you give us the best practices and everything that we're doing on Monday in advance, and what we heard last week to give us best practices or whatever we need to do? Did we make any mistakes or whatever? So we call that kind of armchair quarterback, that we're the ones who are, watching the game down there, and then, trying to help as we can with advice. So Sarah, I didn't answer your question, but if anybody wants to, they can give me a call and I can go through and talk about that kind of stuff. I think Jim sees this, but if not, okay, great. Thank you, Kristen. And thank you, Sarah, for putting me on the spot there, of course. So what other questions do you guys have?
So we have a couple in the Q&A.
Let me look. I'm sorry, I didn't even look over that way.
No, it's okay. Keith has got 2 questions, so you can go through either one or both, or.
Yeah, I'll move this on over to this screen. So sorry, I'm juggling 3 screens. Actually, I have 4 screens open right now. You guys would laugh. Kristen knows I'm an absolute geek, so
That's okay.
I've got too much tech going on right now. So great question. It seems like most ATSs don't really screen applicants. They organize them chronologically, which makes the recruiters have to go through each of them one by one, looking at resumes. You mentioned screening as one of the requirements that they look for. So what type of screening are you referring to? Okay, that's an incredible question. So, and I know there's one more queued up. So let me explain. So what I see typically in some of the better kind of systems, the kind of modern day ATS systems out there, is they offer the capability for you to do screening. Now, there's a couple things that can happen. This can be at the requisition level. It can be at the talent community level. It can be at when someone is in kind of they've applied to a job in the past and they're just sitting there stale in your ATS, right? So there's a couple of things that some of the more modern ATS systems will offer the capabilities of. So the first one is that the configuration of a CRM upfront. So let me talk about that. Is I do something with my customers that I call QIA. On the way in, you want to get someone, and this is kind of ATS, but kind of more before they get into the ATS. So I'm just telling you some things about kind of first step, second step, third step, right? So the first one is with the CRM, when they're coming in, I like to find out a light questions. Just you're not like screening them, but you're asking them light questions that might give you an indicator of, are they qualified for your opportunity? Meaning, I don't want to break any kind of like you're screening them and making them a candidate in advance of them applying to a job. That's not what I'm doing here. But in the CRM, what I typically do is I see people ask them, they try to get to, is this person qualified, interested, and available for me to be able to invite to apply to a certain job? So what I try to do is when I'm setting up CRM systems for companies, I always am trying to put in kind of these markers, factors, segmentation within the CRM. When they come into the talent community, I want to know what segment are they in, kind of job family versus subfamily. Are they in, like an example, HR? If they're in HR, are they talent acquisition, or are they an HR generalist? The more that you can get that kind of upfront helps you with being able to do campaigns and being able to reach out to people that might be passive. They might be tire kicking right now. So there's your CRM. Then in your applicant tracking system, which is where I think your question is, right? So I'm landing the plane and getting to what you're asking about. A lot of companies, what they offer up is, if you have, most of the time, if you've validated your questions with your organizational development and capability team or your OD team, and you validated questions to make sure that you can ask specific questions about the job. And maybe you don't, if you're not as formal, you don't have to do this. I'd work with your legal team to find out what questions you can ask. But most companies out there will have on their webpage, will have, we used to do this at PepsiCo all the time. Are you legally authorized to work in the United States? Are you over 18? Are you, eligible to, or can you lift a certain amount of pounds if you are going to be working in a job at a warehouse, right? So there's specific things that you can, that you ask of all people. And then there are what are called job specific questions. And I think that's what you're getting to, is that, do they have, so when you're going out and you're shopping, you want to find out what is their capability of doing job specific questions, right? So what that means is that you can set up questions about the job that, when they're answered, give you a, I don't want to say a score, but it scores the prospects for you and helps rank the individuals. Now, it's against questions that you put in there. Now, I want to be very careful about what I say. With the ATSs, it may give you a score, it may give you a ranking, but you're you're also putting people, you're just segmenting, or you're putting people into the job pool, meaning that you're not, it's not like you, unless you configure it a certain way, which I would not recommend with your legal team probably wouldn't want this. But what you're doing is you're just bringing the best matches to the top. And so what happens is you can see all the other candidates that have applied, but with job specific questions, what it allows you to be able to do is put like a required, a preferred, not necessary, or, this is, I'd like them to have this, or this, and then you can set that up in the system. So make sure, ask them if they've got job specific questions in the screening to give you some of that. The other thing that I will throw out there, and this is the third thing that more of the modern day ATSs and a lot of companies offer, vendors offer, is the ability to do saved searches. I like to call them kind of automatic overnight searches or scheduled searches. And what happens is it allows you to go in overnight and search your ATS system, whether it's via AI or whether it is the ability for you to be able to go after specific folks. You do that. I just realized, I think we were at time, so I don't know if we're going to be able to get to the last question because I was like yapping away. Kristen, am I going to be able to, keep going here for like 1 second and answer this?
Absolutely, keep going.
Let me answer this last question. You mentioned bringing in stakeholders, get involved in decision-making process. I didn't hear you talk about hiring manager as one of those stakeholders. Yes, you want to make sure. Do you think it's important to understand how they feel about the overall process? Yes, absolutely. And a lot of the modern day ATS systems actually will offer a hiring manager portal, which is a lighter version of the ATS, meaning that they don't need to go into the back end and be like a super user that sees all the bells and whistles. They want to just see the stuff that they want to see, get in and get out. And I highly recommend looking at the hiring manager portal's capabilities and looking into how you would engage the hiring managers, because you want them to be like, this is cool, as opposed to adding in like they've got to go into something and work in something that they don't feel like is a step up. So hopefully that answered both of your stuff. Cool, thanks. So if there are any other questions, I know we're just a little bit over time. It has been 100% my pleasure to be able to share this with you. There's my email address. I did not put my LinkedIn URL out there. Maybe I can put that in the chat. But if you got something out of today, I know a lot of this is common sense stuff. I'm not telling you which system to pick, but if you got something out of today, please put something in the chat just to let me know, hey, this was great, or thanks, Jim, or whatever. Really appreciate it. Thanks so much, guys. And, and feel free to reach out to me and for any help on anything. Okay.
Yes, and thank you, Jim, for presenting, and thank you to Avature for sponsoring this webinar. And we look forward to seeing all of you very soon. Again, Global TA Day, September 7th. We'll see you then.
Great.
Thanks, everyone.
Yep. And I just put my LinkedIn in the chat too. I think I spelled
Perfect.
everything right. So